All right. Thank you guys for jumping on this morning. So I've got Donnie Hollis, pastor for corporate worship at IDC, and then Christy Britton, our discipleship classes coordinator and content guru in all ways. And so we wanted to jump on and talk about family worship this morning. So especially we're recording this during the time of coronavirus. So there's a unique angle here in that a lot of families are spending a lot of time together, and they might be revisiting what does it look like for us to worship together as a family. But even outside of this time, I think one thing that a lot of families, as they follow Jesus, want to do is they want to think about how we can worship and disciple one another as a family unit, and yet it can be really challenging. So we thought we'd jump on and just talk about family worship a little bit, and I'll just kind of play MC here, and then Christy and Donnie can drop all the knowledge. So let's start with a little bit of a definition here. When we're talking about family worship, Donnie, what's a simple way for us to understand what we're talking about?
Yeah, so I think all of us understand personal worship. We know that we're to live a life of worship toward the Lord as our, it's right for us to do that. So we understand it on an individual level. We understand corporate worship, that we all come together and we're going to join together to worship the Lord as his body. And I think what we're talking about, we say family worship, is somewhere in between that, right? Where we have intentional, regular, set-aside time for worship and discipleship as a family, and that's trying to instruct, trying to set apart for the Lord our families, and then also just to adore the Lord and appreciate Him for what He's done. And that can be in the context of, like, for me, I'm married. I've got 5 kids, and another member living with us, and so that's all of us together. Normally at the table, it can look like, if you're married, it can look like just you and your spouse. If you don't have kids, if you're a roommate, it could be if you're single and you have roommates, it could be with them. So just kind of that middle layer of worship is what I would be shooting for.
That's good. Christy, anything you'd add to that as far as just an understanding of family worship?
I think it's just like an expression of our adoration, and that looks very differently. It has many forms, but at its heart, it's an expression of our adoration of the Lord.
That's good. That's good. All right. So that sounds good. I think most people would be like, yes, I'm on board with that. And yet this, I think, proves to be a fairly challenging thing for a lot of families, a lot of Christians, a lot of households to do. And so what do you guys see are some of the common barriers that prevent families from doing this together on a regular basis? Christy, what are some that come to mind for you?
I think if we ourselves don't adore the Lord, we're not going to be very motivated to train our children to do so. So if we're not engaged in family worship at home, I think we have to look at our own hearts. Why aren't we? Why is it so awkward and unfamiliar that we don't naturally want to do this at home?
Yeah, that's good. Okay. What else?
Yeah, if you maybe are a first-generation Christian and have no idea that your faith is not just you, and not just with your church, but also the people you live with, interact. It has something to do with them. Like Christy said, it might be uncomfortable for you. If not, maybe if you're not a first-generation Christian, maybe you grew up in a Christian household that just didn't practice any sort of regular, formal, Bible time together with your family. That can be weird to be the one who's going to get that started. And anytime you're going to start something new, that can be challenging in a lot of ways. You might not be someone who's very rhythmed in your life, so you might not know how to just add a new rhythm into your life of doing something. So that's a couple that come to my mind. Yeah.
I also think schedules. I mean, you mentioned the rhythms kind of thing, but like people are busy, and things get squeezed out that don't. That we don't just really absolutely prioritize. And so it's especially trying to start something, right? Letting something not just start, but like rise to the top and say, we're going to build things around. And then, as we'll, I'm sure, talk about in a while, there's some awkwardness and there's some idealism that go along with all of this. And we can kind of create lofty plans, and then when reality hits, it's not quite as glamorous, and so that can be like, what are we even doing here? So we'll come back to that. But I think those are a couple areas. Okay, that being said, despite all the challenges, why should families kind of press in and try to make this a priority? Like, how would you kind of exhort families to do this on a something family worship like on a regular basis?
Yeah, I think I don't want to go so far as to say the Bible says you must do this. But I think you see this in as a pattern in the Old Testament in Deuteronomy 6. I think you see it in Joshua 24. That the part of having faith in our God is certainly there's an individual component, but there's also, it bleeds over. Of course, it does missionally, all to the ends of the earth, but also to the rest of your household. I think you see it in the New Testament as well. The idea of teaching our children our faith, and even experiencing and exercising our faith in the context that we're in. Yeah. And and it's a blessing, or can be a blessing to get to do that with a family following the Lord.
Christy, what would you add? Why should families kind of prioritize trying to do some kind of family worship?
I think we as parents teach our kids what to value, and we do that verbally, like we instruct them, but we also show them. And so I'm thinking, in my house, we are just rabid LSU football fans, and we have trained our children to love LSU football and turn into just a rightful lunatic on Saturday nights in the fall as we watch.
It's irresponsible, really, but go ahead.
So we have taught them that there are teams that we maybe tolerate, like Ole Miss, Donnie, and then there are teams that we don't value at all, like Alabama.
Here it comes.
But we value LSU Tigers. Now, we didn't have to come up with a plan to think through, how do we get our kids to value LSU? Like, we value it. It's just naturally coming out of us to teach our kids this. And I think it's, there's definitely some analogies there that you can do with worship. When you value the Lord, like, it's just going to come out of you to your children. Like, you're going to want to train them and show them and teach them these things. So I think some of it, you don't have to overthink it too much.
Sure. That's good. I just had the thought, going back, Donnie, to your definition, I think that's really helpful. Just kind of like the middle level of worship. There's a sense in which, culturally and even by impulse, we maybe are driven towards thinking about our faith as kind of a component of our lives. And one of the things we want to be, and to train our kids to be, is to be kind of thorough Christians throughout, right? In all facets of life. And if in our families, our faith is not kind of a part of the regular rhythm, then it does get squeezed into these kind of special times or these private times. And I think by having a regular rhythm like this is something where the gospel is a part of kind of the way we family together, we're saying that, no, this is something that is woven throughout all of our aspects of life. And like our family life is a huge aspect of that. And so one of the things we want to teach our kids is like, no, like, our faith is not marginalized, or it's not privatized, or it's not like an event, but it's thorough. It's throughout. And so here's one way we can say, even as a family, we're going to be Christians together.
Yeah, absolutely. In particular for us in our individualistic culture, there's an impulse to want to say faith is intensely personal, which it is, but that doesn't mean that it should be intensely private necessarily. I think that's probably a lot of our default of, especially for, somebody culture, the culture that I'm from, which is, deep South, where, guys don't show emotion, you choke all those, you swallow all that stuff down, you don't want to demonstrate any kind of emotion or vulnerability or even faith, really. It's just, you keep that stuff to yourself. And I think that's done a lot of, hasn't done us a whole lot of service, at least for me.
That's good. All right. So want to ask you a question, like what encouragement you guys would give to families who have tried to do some kind of family rhythm or family worship rhythms, but have kept running into roadblocks, or it's kept falling, or it just seems really hard and not to be taken. And Christy, I want to start with you. In part, I didn't do this in the introduction, but you've got 4 boys and they're a little bit older, right? So your youngest is how old?
He's 12 and my oldest is 18.
There you go. Okay, so you guys have had some runway here. I'm assuming you've tried various things. What encouragements would you guys would you give to families that have had a hard time getting some momentum?
Try again. And then you wake up the next day and you try again. If the Lord lets you wake up a third morning, try again that day. Like, this isn't something we quit on. It's too important. And so for Stephen and I, we want to train our kids to be worshipers. It's not okay just to train them to be good behaviors. We want them to be good beholders, right? So we have to teach them to worship. We have to teach them what to value. We do this in all other aspects of life. So it shouldn't be some weird thing that we're like, oh, well, how do we teach them to value this? Like, this is what parents do. We help develop our kids' value system. So if you have struggled to figure out how to, create a culture in your home that does this, look at the natural ways you're doing this. Maybe you're teaching them to value exercise or to value, eating their vegetables at dinner and not Doritos. Like, think through what you as a family value and just apply those same sort of rhythms to your faith. Your faith is infinitely more valuable than anything else. So I would just say, look to the things you're already doing that just come natural and try to apply that. Also, like Donnie has mentioned, the intentionality, like, you don't wake up one day becoming awesome at something, right? Like, you practice. And as we daily train our kids in all the things, making their beds, washing their hands, having good manners, like, we train them in this as well. It's just part of the job. And so don't look at it like, Shane, you were saying, like this separate category. Like, this is your family culture. This is what you do as believers. I don't think we have to overthink it. I think some of it should be just a little more natural, especially when we apply that intentionality to it.
Yeah. Donnie?
Yeah, I would just add, this can be very challenging, right? Like, developing a pattern, that can be really hard, to start something new and then to keep with it long enough that it becomes not only a pattern, but part of your culture. That's a hard thing. That takes a long time, and you shouldn't, feel too bad about it being a hard thing, just to help free people up. It's not necessarily the easiest thing if you've never done it before. It's not complicated. It doesn't have to be complicated. We can talk about the components of it in just a minute, but it still doesn't make it easy, especially at the beginning, if your faith has existed, basically internally or corporately, but not on this familial level. And so just that can be weird, challenging, awkward. There can be several starts and stops. And I think the encouragement is just, hey, keep going. Like, for the person who does that, you have several starts and stops. I want to say, you're doing it. If you have a goal to do this, 7 nights a week, and you do it 1 night a week, hey, you're still doing it, and so keep on.
Yeah, that's really good. I think that perseverance, even that perseverance, is somewhat instructive, right? Like, right, we haven't found a sweet spot yet, but we're going to keep pressing on, is teaching something both to your own heart and also to those in your family. Like, hey, this is worth keep continuing to try to find something. So, okay, what components should a family consider including in a kind of a family worship effort or rhythm? And the qualifier here is, we're probably not, I don't think any of us are saying here's the formula, right? We're just saying here's some things that we can try to consider as we're piecing together what is our family rhythm going to look like. So, Christy, what are some things you would think a family should consider?
Reading of the word and praying, I think, are 2 non-negotiables for us. I think it can be a lot more than that, and I'll let Donnie talk about that. But for us, it's never any less than that.
Okay. Yeah, it's good.
Singing.
Yeah.
I would include singing. I think that's part of what we do when we worship. Again, on all 3 levels. Privately, we sing. Corporately, we sing. I think as families, it's a really good thing for us to sing. And I say that as someone who sings as part of my job. I understand. I would imagine that people would think on our family and just it's like the Von Trapp family singers, where we all just sing. And it's really not like that. There are times when I'll sit at the piano or grab a guitar and play. That's probably 10% of the time. Most of the time, it's just us at the table. We're learning a hymn, and it might take us, teaching all the kids. It took us like a month to get through all the verses of Amazing Grace,
Absolutely.
and it's just, we're clapping or like hitting the table, just trying to make it fun. And so I would include that as well. I think those three components. I've been really helped by a guy named Donald Whitney, who wrote a book that was basically saying those same three components: to read the Bible, to sing together, and to pray together. And that really freed me up to say, okay, yeah, I can do that. I can read the scriptures. We can pray together and we can sing together, and it doesn't have to be that complicated.
Yeah. And I think this could probably be overstated, but Donnie, I was really helped when I was, my kids are a little bit younger than at least your oldest are, and thinking about for our family and trying to figure out what's the role of fun in this. I mean, you talked about people, banging on the table and all that kind of stuff. Like there's some element of I don't want to I don't want to bait my kids with like, hey, we're gonna have this fun experience when it comes to like our faith. But at the same time, like I want them to enjoy the Lord, and I want them to enjoy the things of the Lord. And so, I mean, when my 4-year-old, my 3-year-old start marching around and kind of stop singing because I'm like, is this a good thing or is this a bad thing? But I do think there's some element of fun that can be a helpful component there, rather than just like heaviness and drudgery or anything. And then Chrissy, in particular, I'd be interested to hear from you what role like conversation goes, what interaction, what does that play? Because full disclosure, for my family, it's not one, but I think that's more a limitation of my kids. I long for the day I can have an actual conversation with my kids, but right now it's very I don't know, tactile and all that. They're very concrete people right now.
It's great because teenagers know everything. So it really adds just depth to our conversation because they love to play this game. Like, let's stump mom and dad. Let's ask them this really obscure question,
So
which, to be fair, may not be that hard to do as stump us, but teenagers have really figured everything out. And so it's kind of fun to watch them dialogue about, because we're always like, what does this say about the Lord? What does this say about man? What does this say about, whatever the question is that we're trying to get them to see the Lord magnified in that. It's really interesting what they come up with. Now, when they're 2 and 4 and 6, we're maybe not having such in-depth Q&A, but as teenagers, you can really unravel a lot of things, and they're very curious. And that helps conversation as well.
Yeah. Donnie, do you guys have like a back and forth, like a little dialogue, or is it mainly kind of teaching?
Yeah, so we'll sit down. It takes a while to kind of corral the kids. So I've got a 10-year-old, 6, 4, 2, and then we just had a newborn baby who's not that he doesn't participate that much. But so we kind of all sit down together at the table. We finish the meal, and then we open the scriptures. I start asking questions, so I try to get the kids involved as best I can for that's age appropriate. So the 2-year-old gets the same question pretty much every time. What book is this? In the Bible. Yes, that's our, we're all thrilled about it. And we're reading through the Old Testament as a family. So this is I think we're on year 3, and we just got into Judges. So it takes a really, really long time. But like for her, it's okay. What book is this? This is the Bible. All right, what book of the Bible are we in? And she'll go, Judges. And that's right. John, what chapter are we in? Okay, he's 4. So, where are we at in the book? And so he can, hang with that. And then the older ones, you can kind of get more understanding the context of what's happening in the story. And then with my 10-year-old, we can have even deeper conversations. What is it? Even for him, how does this point to Jesus? How does Jesus, how is he better than Joshua, Caleb, Moses? What does this remind you about in the New Testament? Like all kinds of questions like that. And then with Megan, it can be super edifying just between the two of us of, what is this? I was super encouraged. Most of the time when we do our family worship time, it's not like the Spirit of the Lord descends in this very, atmospheric kind of way, and everybody's sitting quietly. It's normally crazy. There's a little bit of crazy chaos to it. And at the beginning that bothered me. And then I just started to love it, and we just started having more fun. And, you got to kind of be a ringleader, but we've gotten to where we can have fun with it and not get too discouraged when things kind of go off the rails. But most of the time, it's not this great ethereal feeling. Every now and then, it'll catch you. Like we were reading through like Leviticus, and just the Lord talking about, you guys are going to break all this stuff and I'm still going to forgive you. And I'm like sitting at the table, like, oh, it hits me. And so the conversation that's a long answer. Sorry. But yeah, conversation is a part of it. Trying to figure out how to talk to kids in the group of the family that's age level appropriate is something that has taken me years to do. And I'm still trying to get good at it. So, we want to have a mixture of silly and serious,
That's good. All right. Donnie already kind of started hitting on this with his, but Christy, for your family, like, let's just get kind of brass tacks. Like, what does this look like for your family? When do you guys do family worship? How often? Who leads? What that kind of thing? What does it look like for you guys?
Yeah, so we have dinner together, and then Stephen and I will go on a walk while the kids do the dishes. Now, obviously, this is something that you get to do with teenagers, so I want to caveat that. But when we come back from our walk, the kitchen is clean, and that's when we do it. So the house is kind of in a good state of order. And then sometimes we're at the table, sometimes we move to the couch, but we get the Bibles out. And then we're reading through Mark right now with the kids. So Stephen usually does the reading, and then he starts with questions. And question in A gets a little interesting, and there's some serious and some silly, like Donnie said, even with them. And then of course they know everything, so we have to learn from them their knowledge and maybe correct where needed. But then, like, something we're just focusing on in our house this year is teaching them to pray. And so when we are finished with the text, and it's not always a full chapter, sometimes it's a few verses. It's just, we don't have like a handbook, like we're just going through it at a slow pace. But when we are finished with the discussion, Stephen will always ask the kids, okay, based on what we've read, what are some things we should be praying for? And in that, we are also trying to guide them in what are things we should confess based on, this text? What are things we should be asking for? What are things we should be thanking the Lord for? How are we praising him in this? So we're trying to get them to see the different components to prayer. And then they all we ask them, like, we don't assign them a thing, but we're like, okay, do you have in your head, something that you'd like to pray for? And usually Steve and I take turns. One of us will start the prayer, one of us will end it, or vice versa. But it's short, like, we're not trying to teach them to do the long 20-minute business. Like, we just want to get them comfortable with praying for their one thing. And so we just sort of work our way through the room, and then we end, and Steve and I are always kind of making sure we've hit all the different aspects of, confession, adoration, things like that. But, it's not complicated. We read the Bible, we discuss it, and then we pray. Maybe we will sing more now that God has told us. We would love to sing more. We just don't sing very well, but we love to listen to music, but not so much the singing. So maybe we will add that in tonight.
So, so how many nights a week does this happen at you guys' house?
I wouldn't say 7. I would say 4 or 5.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. I mean, the quarantine has made it a little easier because we're all at home at the same time, which is tricky with teenagers. But I would say 4 to 5 usually.
And then the total start to finish of the time, not including the dishes, that's worshipful in a different way, but not including that, how long do you guys sit down together?
I would say it's probably never more than half an hour, but it could be 15 if there's not a ton of conversation. Okay, great. All right, Donnie, how many nights a week for you guys, family?
Yeah, probably 3 to 4, okay. or more. If it's not always in the nights, in the evenings for us. Okay. That's the default. That's ideal. That's if I'm home. If I'm home, we're having supper. Then that's what we're going to be doing. Most likely, if we have people over, we like to involve them in it. They don't have to do anything. They can just watch, be a part, laugh. If I know that I'm going to be at a growth group or something that evening and I'll be away, then if I'm there, then I'll try to do something in the morning. Just even more brief. Just a quick thought for the day and pray for them. And sing. In getting started singing, you can just pick something really simple like the doxology, right? That everybody knows. You don't have to be a great singer to sing it and it sound good. And you can do that. You can sing that same song for like 2 months. Yeah. And then you can switch over to what's the song that would be good? Amazing Grace. All right, let's just sing. Everybody knows how to sing the first verse of Amazing Grace. And you can do that for 2 months, until you get tired of it,
Yeah. My wife and I are really, really tired of Jesus Loves Me. It's which we're glad he loves us, but yeah, that's good. What's
it like for you, Shane? Because you don't sing, yet you sing for family worship.
Yeah, I get to be like the village idiot when it comes to our singing and stuff. So we do try to sing. This is something that I've been I think encouraged to do, mainly by rubbing shoulders with Donnie. Nobody in our family is particularly musically inclined, so we sing every night. One of the kids gets to pick a song. We're trying to build up a kind of a hymnody for our kids. And so what I did is I just sat down and got a bunch of songs, hymns, whatever that I thought that kids could sing, and I just made this big old Word document. And at the top of every page, I put like a little a clip art image. So they're on a bunch of half sheets, and I put a clip art image, and then I taped them on the wall of our kids' room. And so they can, before they even know the songs, they can point to the one with the water or the one with the sun or something like that. And it's some connecting, some loosely connected idea or image to the song. And so they get to pick a song, and then we'll sing it. And kind of like Donnie said, we'll sing it into the ground for like a month, so that they can learn it, and then eventually they're walking around, playing and singing "Nothing But the Blood" or something like that. And so that's been fun. But we clap, but none of us can really keep a beat, and so we clap on syllables. And so, which just hurts Donnie and other musically inclined people. But we just clap on syllables, and then usually try to keep the kids. Sometimes we'll have them get up and march around or something like that. If everybody finishes family worship with their clothes on, we can kind of consider that a victory. But yeah, they seem to enjoy it, and they like to sing. They remind us if we're trying to hurry, if we're trying to like just kind of get through things, they want to remind us to sing. So our kids really enjoy it, and now they've got 10 or so songs that are halfway decent. So we're rolling with it.
I was just telling Donnie, I think I miss the singing more than anything about our corporate worship. And so the last 2 Sundays when we've been able to have Donnie leading music, like it takes me a few minutes to like get over my emotional weepiness of just missing singing corporately with everyone. Yeah. It's just special, and I miss it a lot.
Good. Any other thoughts? We talked about other things that we probably could kick around with this. Maybe we'll do a part 2 with follow-up. Any other things you guys would say to encourage or instruct anybody out there who's trying to move in this direction?
Yeah, I would just say, just keep trying to do things. There's a sense where the people who do this, they have this special kind of relationship with their family or with the Lord. And I don't think so. Like I talk to guys who feel so much pressure of, now I've got to have this great thing, and I'm never going to get there. And just to encourage dads in particular, you probably are praying with your family somewhat. Either before meals, you're going to church with them. So we're praying together in the gathering. Maybe you pray with them before you go to bed. So like you already are praying with them. So just be encouraged. It's not something that's completely new for you, most likely. Same thing with reading the scriptures. It doesn't have to be this really long thing. You can just read a handful of verses. Or a story, like go to the New Testament and read the story. I talked to a brother this weekend who uses the NIV family study Bible, which is basically just narratives for the family to read. Like, amen, that's fantastic. We started reading the ESV, and I got through the first month of it and was like, this is just so choppy, and it feels hard to do, even though the ESV is not choppy, and switched to a different translation. So we use the New Living Translation, which is more of a thought for thought than a word for word. But that was immediately everything got smoother. And so that's the Bible that we've been using. So that's super helpful. Don't feel tied to a particular translation. You can for your personal, but for your family, feel free to have some room there. And then with singing, if you're someone who doesn't like to sing, who's afraid to sing, that's okay. I'll just take little steps, and nobody's judging you. You're going to be your harshest critic when it comes to singing around other people. And so give yourself a lot of grace. And if you need that, if you just completely have no idea, put something on your phone and hit play. You guys can sing along with that. There's a group that our family loves called Slugs and Bugs, and they put out songs, and they're good. So that's a good resource. Donald Whitney's book is a great resource. There's a guy named Joel Beakey who I like everything he has to say. If you just turn the intensity down a little bit, he's a little, his stuff is good. He's pretty direct. We have a hymnal. I've got one of these, the Hymns of Grace. that's super useful if you're like, I don't know what songs to do. And then Joe Beakey edited this book, The Family Worship Guide, which is not really good, but it goes through every chapter in the Bible, and it's got kind of where does this chapter fit into the context of the whole Bible, and then another section of how does this point toward Christ, which is helpful, even though not all of it is super good, which is encouraging because it's like, okay, I can do better than this, and so that ended up in a roundabout way being encouraging.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so good. Christy, any final thoughts, encouragements?
I just go back to like thinking through Matthew, the parable where the guy finds the hidden treasure in the fields, and he with joy goes and sells everything he has so that he can go buy this field. Like that's what we want to do in our homes. We want to value the gospel so much that, we've been delivered from this domain of darkness and transferred into the kingdom of Jesus. Like we want our kids to value that. And so just a base foundational way to do that in your home is lead them in worship. So that's the goal.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Well, thank you guys so much. Like I said, we could do a follow-up if anybody has questions or has another topic on these lines you'd like us to tackle. Shoot me an email, and we'll be glad to try to tackle that. But otherwise, hopefully this will be a good primer and really just a good encouragement to learn alongside of all of us to try to just disciple our kids well. So
yeah, hey, and once all this is over, if open invite, I'm not kidding. If you our phone number, my phone number is and the address is in the directory. So if you want to, like, I have no idea how to do this, and I just want to see somebody do it, just call me, come to my house, have supper with me, and you can be a part of our family worship and see how unspectacular it is. It's absolutely, the whole church, anybody who wants to come, you're welcome to.
That's so good. All right, thank you guys. Appreciate it.